Brothers and sisters, happy Sunday. Kinfolk, on this day of days, when we celebrate the glory of new life in God, let us begin with prayer. Holy One who dwells in darkness and who brings forth life, I pray that you will inhabit our hearts as we seek your presence this day and every day of this incredible season of new life. Amen. So today I'm preaching about hope. And hope is like faith, kind of a funny thing. It doesn't carry a whole lot of water for folks who live very much in this modern day and age. Hope can feel kind of old-fashioned. It gets a bad rap, too. And mainly because people don't really understand what we mean as Christians when we say hope, or they don't understand how we hope, or how to hope even. I blame the news for this, mainly. You know, if you watch the news, God help you, first of all, but I'm not exactly what you would call an old person, but at least not physically maybe. But even I can remember a time when the news media on the television, it just meant that you point a camera at somebody, usually a pretty fancy looking person, and they would be reading the news to us and telling us the news. Journalists would go out and collect the data, and they'd write a story, and then the newscasters would tell us what happened. And we'd sit at home and go, huh, so that's what happened. And then we'd say, honey, did you see the news? Did you see what happened? And that was it. That was the news. But the news today isn't anything like that anymore. Today the news is like 5 whole seconds of what happened, and then it's like endless hours of what this means. What this means is newscaster conjecture. It used to be saved for the editorial page. But we're obsessed with what this means, and not so much with what happened. What this means for the markets, what this means for the poor, for young people, what this means for the Democrats, what this means for the White House, what this means for next week's news. It's like they let the economists take over writing the news. Because deep down, we want to know, all of us want to know what the future holds. That's a perfectly natural feeling to have. But we've somewhat become addicted to it, addicted to this feeling, addicted to predicting the future. I mean, cats and dogs are not addicted to knowing the future. We evolved this trait, anthropologically speaking, because we learned at a certain point in our evolution that we would die. And this created terror in us. We call it mortal terror. We saw other people die and we thought, well, whatever that is, I don't want that to happen to me. So instead of simply taking care of ourselves as best we could in the moment, we learned how to hedge our bets. And we started making plans. We started trying to throw some reins around the future, like it was a horse that we could maybe tame or ride, as if we had power over that horse. Hope doesn't really play well with this sort of behavior, with this kind of thing. Hope begins, the genesis of hope, the beginning of hope, is an admission or a confession that we can't know what the future holds. We just don't know. Hope begins with surrender. Now if you say, I'm going to store up provisions for myself because the winter's coming, that's preparedness. And it's not bad, but that's not hope. Okay? You don't store up provisions and then say, I hope I don't go hungry. In the same manner that faith is not information, hope is not prediction. Christians need both of these things. We need faith and we need hope. And we need love in great measure. But we're not really programmed well up here in the noodle for any of those 3 things. The Jesus way, the method, the religious practice, whatever you want to call it, it calls on us to do some pretty radical things that are very much at odds with the way that we evolved as a species to behave. And that's okay. It is. We evolved to do all sorts of silly stuff. We evolved to love sugar and salt because those things were in critically short supply out there on the savannah. And so we're driven to find things that are sweet or salty. But that does not put us at an advantage today where salt and sugar are literally everywhere. We didn't evolve these things for playing the fiddle or the piano, but they do a mighty fine job at it. So with Jesus and his way, we're asked to hope. And so hope for what, we ask? Hope for what? And a lot of people can get other people to give them a lot of money by answering that question. So I want to be really careful with this. The answer, when we read the Gospels, that seems to come back to us is this. Hope for that which you can only have faith in. It's kind of a Zen kind of a thing. And we don't get it right. But today, this Resurrection Sunday, this is a day to celebrate surrender and getting this hope thing right. And so I'm going to drill down into it a little bit. And I almost caught myself. I almost said, I hope you come away with a better understanding. Let me say this. I hope, and I'm a hopeful person. Okay, hope begins in a place of no hope. Ex nihilo, out of nothing. Hope springs. And if you're hoping for things that you can put your finger on, I'm going to tell you, you're probably already lost. You probably already are hoping for the wrong thing. At its simplest form, we could maybe say, I hope for a world that is the best possible world. Even a non-believer, somebody who's an agnostic person could engage with that. I hope for a world that is the best possible world. It's okay that we don't know what that world looks like. And that's the important thing. That's the critical thing to understand at Easter and in times where hope is called for. That it's okay if we don't know exactly what that world looks like. That's where faith comes in. Now, the disciples, a lot of them hoped that Jesus would overthrow Rome, or at the very least, liberate and redeem Israel. And then he died. Now, they tell you about their hopes in this process in the Bible. They talk about it. Where they say to Jesus, they don't know it's Jesus, and they're walking with him on the road to Emmaus. And they say Jesus was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and the people, and the chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. So there you have it. That's what they hope for, and then they don't, apparently at Emmaus, don't get what they hope for. We had hoped. They tell you what they hoped for. Now, the cosmic punchline to this whole story is that their hopes were way too small. And that is the case in nearly every case when you're talking about hope in God. I don't like to go on a whole lot about what happens to us when we die. And people give me grief about this. Don't you believe in heaven, Pastor Nathan? Ain't there me pie in the sky, sweet by and by? Don't you believe in the judgment and the hereafter? Okay, sure, I can say. But I will guarantee you that whatever sort of hopeful picture I have come up with in my mind, it won't hold a candle to the reality of the thing, to the reality of the experience. So, well, you might say then, why don't you just hope for something more? Hope for a bigger pie in the sky. Hope for a better, hope for brighter. And I just think that that's a sucker's game. I do. I just think you're losing before you begin. Hope, real hope, Easter hope, nourishing hope, I think suspends judgment and avoids specifics. And I think that Mary Magdalene in the Bible is the person who gets this. I think that she's the disciple who really understands it. I think that's why God chose Mary to be the first evangelist, the first Christian to proclaim the good news, because she hoped. She hoped when she heard his voice. We hope not for that which we can see specifically, but we hope because it is our practice to be hopeful. In a similar vein to this, our faith is not based on anything that can be seen or measured or proven one way or the other. As soon as it's that, it ceases to be faith. It becomes fact, fiction, science, material positivism, whatever you want to call it. Faith bears no burden of proof. All right? In fact, the Gospels are clear in many places that you can actually witness plenty of things with your eyes and still not have faith. Remember in Galilee, following the resurrection, the disciples in the Gospel of Matthew, they see Jesus, they see him resurrected, they hear his words, they go to the mountain. It says 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. This is Matthew 28 from verse 16. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Okay, well, the disciples see him, and still they doubt. So you can see with your eyes, you can have things proven to you, and it's still something other than faith. I'm not saying it's faithlessness, or anything like that. I'm just saying that faith is a different category of understanding and engaging with reality. So Jesus teaches this himself elsewhere, especially though, and I think most beautifully and poignantly in the parable of the foolish rich man and Lazarus at the gates of the rich man's house. Now there's this rich man and there's a poor man. The short of the story is that you got to understand that things go poorly for the rich man in the hereafter when he dies. And the rich man asks Father Abraham to send a ghost to tell his idiot brothers not to make the same mistakes that he made in life, valuing material possessions over his discipleship or his mantle. He says, Father Abraham, send a ghost to my brothers so at least they won't end up in this horrible predicament. And Father Abraham says, no, they've got Moses and the prophets to teach them. And the rich man says, no, listen, they're not going to listen to Moses and the prophets, but a ghost, they'll listen to a ghost, that's what's needed. And Abraham says, look, fella, I don't know why I use that voice for Abraham. Listen here, pal, says Abraham. If they aren't going to believe Moses and the prophets, they're not going to believe a ghost, right? And so there you have it. Faith is holding fast to things in our life that cannot be proven true by the world's standards. This is what differentiates us a lot of the times from agnosticism, which is just simply a position of not knowing. But a certain measure of agnosticism is important and critical for our practice of hope. Hope, when we combine it with faith, it just permits us and leads us to practice our lives with a posture of things are going to turn out okay. Mary is there in the garden today, and this is that liminal space where faith and hope combine to create Easter. She is a person of faith and hope, and she is ready to be astounded by how well things have actually turned out. Not that Jesus had liberated Jerusalem, not that he had overthrown Rome, and not even simply that he had rose from the dead, but rather that her rabbi, her beloved teacher, had in fact defeated death itself and broken its power over the world. So that no one, for all time, ever need fear an empire or a Caesar or a system of sin, or even those who wield death as though it is their own personal authority, but rather we could have confidence that God is stronger than all of these things. Is it an answer? I mean, no, because hope is not an answer. Hope is, nor is faith particularly an answer to some question. It's a posture. And if it's anything for us who are in the Jesus movement, it is a response to Jesus' question, "Who do you say I am?" That's not a wrong, right answer. It's not your ticket to heaven or hell. It is a posture. In other words, it is to say, if you believe that I am who I say I am, and I have done what I've done, then why do you despair? It's a posture. Hope is a way that we engage with the world. It's a way that we receive the world also every single day on the world's terms. Jesus is desperate to get us to understand this, I think. He says, why do you worry? Tomorrow will bring worries enough for itself. He says, so what does faith and hope look like in practice? That I can tell you. I can tell you what it looks like. It looks like being present. It looks like being present in the moment. That's why some of this is so hard for some of us, because we are desperately wanting to be present with each other. But Mary is present in the garden. Perhaps her mind wanders, but when she hears Jesus' voice, she is brought into the immediacy of the moment. It is being present in the very moment of time that you find yourself in. To say to yourself that this moment right now is what demands my attention, my labor, my affection, my non-anxious presence, whatever it is. It demands that I stop be a human planning, a human fretting, a human worrying, but rather go back to being a human being. Being is what we were created to do. That's what hope and faith in action look like. The powerful presence of mind to be in the moment. No worries, again, because worrying is just like praying for bad stuff to happen. Hope and faith in action make us into an Easter people in the garden of God's great victory over death. Hope in the time of the coronavirus, is a willingness to say, I don't know how this will all end, but my posture is one of positivity for the future. And that's the whole thing. But you say, I want to know how it ends. I want to know how the story ends, right? So we can shout and shake our fists at the horizon. I want to know what's going to become of me. You can do that. You can shake your fists at the horizon all day. It's not going to get you any closer to your destination. We make the road of hope by walking. How does the story end? How is it going to turn out? Well, I'll get you as close as I know how. At the very height of her power, at the very peak of her mystical visions and her insight, St. Julian of Norwich learned how to tell the ending in such a way as to sustain hope without shattering faith. She summoned great courage, and in the depths of her personal despair for the condition of the world, she brought all of this to Jesus Christ. And she writes, in my folly before this time I wondered why, by the great foreseeing wisdom of God, the onset of sin was not prevented. This impulse that nevertheless I mourned and I sorrowed that sin had not been prevented. But Jesus, in this vision, informed me of all that is needed, answered with these words and said, yes, it is necessary that there should be such evil in the world, but all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Beloved, this is a season of resurrection, suspended in time And let me remind you of how the ending goes without spoiling anything for your journey. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Amen.